This is every student pilot's worst nightmare.
Still on traffic, 9-4 Juliet, we're having engine roughness. I'm going to go ahead and land 3-2 immediately. Still on traffic.
You just took off, you lost engine power, you have two options.
9-4 Juliet, upwind, runway 14, parallel traffic.
All you have is your training.
Watching out for you, buddy.
In this situation, what would you do?
I'm truly at a loss for words. I am beyond grateful for the level of support that you guys have given me in the past 48 hours. I'm in shock. And I just wanted to say thank you. The testimonials that you guys have left just in my comment section are astounding. These are stories from all over the world. Here I am, this crazy kid in South Texas, just trying to chase his dream, and all of a sudden I have people from France and Belgium and the Middle East and Canada and all over America, all over the world. There are people just like me, and they're you guys that share the same passion for aviation. So I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I feel like I have a responsibility to make good content for you guys, to make it valuable, to keep it interesting, and really to take this opportunity and run with it. Now, with that being said, today's video is really to break down a very unfortunate situation that I had. I had my first emergency landing on August 27th at about 8 a.m. I would argue this is every student pilot's worst nightmare. I know you guys, we've all seen the videos on YouTube. One of the Sporties instructors had a very similar event. They had a power failure during upwind. What I wanted to do today was debrief this emergency situation and what I did good and what I could have done better. In anything in life, we don't learn from our successes and our wins as much as we do from our failures. And I'm sure most of you guys follow Pilot Debrief. I'm gonna shout him out right here. He's probably one of my favorite creators. I've been listening to him for years now, well before I even considered making this jump. And the debrief in an emergency situation is the most important thing that can happen. I've already had this with my instructor, and I've debriefed myself at night, laying in bed, just thinking about what could have happened, what I did wrong, what I could have done better. Now again, I will preface this by saying I landed safely. I had a passenger. I was able to make a 180-degree turn. We're gonna take a little pause. Nobody was injured, no damage to the plane, and at the end of the day, to me, that is the most important thing. So for that, I'm very grateful. I finished my training as a private pilot. I passed my check ride on a Friday. I planned a flight from here in Pearland, Texas, KLVJ to North Conroe Airport in North Houston. I'm gonna go ahead and insert my flight plan right here so you can actually see what I planned. I did my weight and balance. I was monitoring the weather the night before. So once I'd done my weather briefing, I was fine, weather was clear, that was a go. So I picked up my friend about 6:30 in the morning. It was about a 30-minute drive to the airport. We got here, we used the restroom, we had a little snack, drank some water. I pulled the plane out, I pre-flighted it exactly to the POH checklist. At this point, nothing strange. It was a totally normal flight. I tuned into the local AWOS. I again confirmed some wind, visibility, cloud levels, and then we proceeded to taxi down to runway 14 via the Alpha taxiway. I taxied down to the end of the runway, I went to the run-up spot, and I started my pre-run-up checklist. Running my checklist, I had a left mag failure. It dropped more than 150 RPM, which is a no-go decision. Now here in a flying club, our planes get a lot of hours. These spark plugs do foul pretty frequently, so as my instructors taught me, I just lean the aircraft a little bit, I run it at a higher RPM, about 1800 RPM for about a minute. And by doing this, you'll clean off the fouled fuel on the spark plug, which allows it to operate normally. So what I did, I ran it. After that, the left mag passed. So, okay, we're still good to go. There's no reason to cancel this flight. With that being said, I approached the runway entrance. I'm at an untowered airport here, so I made my call.
Still on traffic, 9-4 Juliet. We're gonna be departing runway 14. We're gonna be departing the pattern to the east. Still on traffic.
I had one person about 3 miles to the north making their radio call that they were heading in, but traffic was no factor at this point.
Still on traffic, helicopter 426, call 3 to the northeast of the field, coming about for landing parallel 14, parallel.
So with that being said, I finished my call. I made my entrance onto the runway, and here I'm gonna overlay my radio calls and my Microsoft Flight Simulator data to really give you a side-by-side comparison of what's happening. Once I hit center line on the runway, I applied takeoff power. And I was on center line, observing my instruments. Power was set, airspeed was alive, everything was where it needed to be. Instruments were fine, EGT, CHT, all my pre-flight checklists were done. As soon as I hit my rotation speed, I began to pull back on the yoke. Because the overcast was about 1,500 feet, I wasn't aggressively going to climb at a VY. I was climbing at about 100 miles per hour. So once I rotated, I subtly noticed that the engine coughed. Situational awareness definitely kicked up, and I continued my climb. I was upwind, and at about 300 feet AGL, my RPM dropped from takeoff power of about 2,400 RPM down to about 1,750. It was a little bit less than 1,800. This was simultaneously accompanied with some of the most violent shaking I've ever felt in an aircraft in my entire life. It probably was, I'm downplaying it, but it was terrifying.
Fail on traffic, 94 Juliet, we're having engine roughness. I'm going to go ahead and land 3-2 immediately. Fail on traffic.
At this point, I kind of went into shock. Every emergency situation I've seen on YouTube and debriefs, people always say when something happens, there's a period of about 5 or 10 seconds where mentally you're trying to process everything that's happening. And this is exactly what happened to me. For about 5 or 10 seconds, the only thing I was really looking at was my airspeed and my altitude, just trying to assess the situation. At this point, I knew immediately that I had a substantial engine failure. It was not catastrophic, but it was partial. And I had two fields, one off my left and one off my right, 20 degrees off my ground track, which gave me a realistic landing opportunity in the event of a catastrophic failure. I was less than 500 feet off the ground, which was a big problem. I would argue that this is every student's worst nightmare. I noticed at 1750 RPM, between 17 and 1800, I was able to climb and I was able to maintain airspeed. This to me gave me some confidence in the situation. Now, what I was really worried about was a partial engine failure turning into a catastrophic engine failure. So at this point, my mind is stuck between two ultimatums. One, am I landing in a field? Or two, do I have enough power to attempt a 180 and land on the opposite direction of the runway? Now, by this point, I was climbing. I was probably about 500 feet, and I said, you know what? I'm going to attempt a turn to crosswind and see if I can maintain power. If I can maintain power in a crosswind just enough, I know I can make it back to the runway. If I have a catastrophic failure that progresses, I will be able to then at least make a U-turn back to the fields. So the decision-making process was very instantaneous, and I'm not going to say this worsened the situation, but I had a passenger with me who's never been in a small plane. He is a reserve unit in the U.S. Marine Corps, very tough individual, very mentally strong. He did not panic at all, and he joked with me afterwards. He said, Cameron, if you told me we were going to die, I was going to be very calm about it. So that was very fortunate in that regard to not have a panicking passenger. By the way, what I'm going to do, it's getting pretty dark outside. I'm going to go ahead and transition into an indoor setting. I do like filming out here in the airfield. I think it's raw and unfiltered, but I'm worried it's getting too dark. So let's go hop over inside. Let's go film a little bit, and I'll go ahead and finish the story with you guys. See ya. And we're back. All right, that was magical, wasn't it? Once I was crosswind and I still had partial power, I had climbed up until this point maybe 600, 650 feet. I had to make a split-second decision. Was I able to go into a downwind, attempt a pattern, or on the flip side, was I just going to attempt the 180 and guarantee a secure and safe landing on asphalt? And instinctively, this is where I think pilot's tuition really comes down to practice. The saying goes, you don't rise to the occasion, but you fall to your level of training. So at this point, I was more interested in guaranteeing the safety of myself, my passenger, and the aircraft that I was in. So I, at this moment, determined I was going to complete the 180 back to the runway. During this turn, I never exceeded a bank angle of more than roughly 20 degrees. I was trying to keep it as shallow as possible. Obviously, exceeding a critical angle of attack was my worst nightmare at that moment of time. So as soon as I made this decision, I went ahead and verified my airspeed. I was a little bit less than 100 miles per hour. I was just within the margin of the white arc on my airspeed indicator to actually add a notch of flaps, because at this point, now my mindset was switching from emergency management down to landing. So I added the notch of flaps to try to enter a glide path that was stable as possible. The last thing I wanted was to have a really crazy, unstable approach that could eventually compound into something much worse. Here on the runway at 14 and 32 in Pearland, we have ditches, rain runoff ditches on each side of the runway that go down 6 to 8 feet. And if you land in that, even at stall speed, it's gonna be a really bad day. Once I added the notch of flaps, I was able to point the nose of the aircraft back to the start of the runway. I was maybe at a 45-degree entry to the runway. I was not on a straight approach. So my approach, although I was going to be on a stable glide path, required me to make a descending turn to land on the runway. Now, my fear in doing this was obviously overextending and having to make a correctional turn that would put me back again on the other side to the right of the runway. I was able to correct from the left side just a little bit back over to the center line, level the wings, maintain that glide in the flare, and just hold it until she stalled, gently touching the ground. It was a beautiful landing. I ended up touching a little long. I landed right at midfield on this runway.
Tailline traffic, 94 Juliet, made it safely, had to do a turnaround on crosswind. I'm exiting the runway 32 at Alpha 5, tailline traffic.
Got you in sight, doesn't look like anybody else is here but us. You all right?
And we had a pretty significant power failure at about 350 feet AGL. Really kind of concerning, man. I'm a little shaken up, but we're all good.
Did a great job. Looked amazing from here.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, I passed my check ride last week, so here we are. Welcome to GA.
That's exactly right, man.
Really, to summarize this entire experience, I wanted to debrief my strengths and my weaknesses. Now, I'm going to try to do a little scoreboard here on the right and the left, and I'm just going to bullet these for you. 1, I think my stress management and the fact I did not panic in the situation was a strength. That I had my critical thinking in the moment of a high stress environment. Critical thinking, I would give myself a pro. I would say in regards to aircraft management, in terms of slowing the aircraft down, maintaining glide path, never exceeding critical angle of attack, being very situationally aware, I would give myself a strength and situational awareness. Now, my weaknesses, there were really 2 or 3 things. One of them is subjective, but I feel like these are very important things to consider. So one thing I failed to do was to push the mixture full rich. The next thing that I would say was probably a weakness was my failure to recognize wind. Now, because this was at about 8 in the morning, winds were calm and variable. There was really no wind, maybe 1 to 2 knots, variable, very inconsistent. So wind was not a factor. However, when I debriefed with my instructor and we were role-playing the scenario, if I would have attempted a 180-degree landing and I had a 15-knot upwind that turned to a 15-knot tailwind, my aircraft may not have touched down until the 1,000-foot markers at the end of the runway, and I probably would have ran off the end of the runway into the grass. Now, even in that situation, I likely would not have been injured. The plane likely would not have been damaged, but nonetheless, it still could have been a potential risk that I should have acknowledged. But in a partial engine failure situation like that, in a high traffic environment, the safest thing probably is to attempt a pattern. So to enter a downwind instead of making the crosswind 180. I attempted the crosswind 180 because traffic was essentially non-existent. I had 1 helicopter on the taxiway. He was not ready for departure, so I had a window of time. Now, if I was at a towered airport with a lineup of aircraft behind me, this would have been a major problem. At the point of which I was, there may have been another aircraft rolling down the runway, accelerating, and with no ability to stop. So thank you guys for watching. If this helped you or scared you in a good way, let me know. Comment, like, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for the support. I'm beyond grateful. Stay tuned. My next video is going to be top 5 things I wish I knew before becoming a pilot. And with that being said, guys, thank you. Have a good time.